Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to my shop. Today I want to talk about bevel angles on planes, chisels, and other things. What angle should I set them at? Let's start some arguments. As with anything in woodworking, the answer is, it depends. There are lots of different theories and backstories and technical reasons why someone might sharpen it at 25 degrees as opposed to 30 degrees, as opposed to 35 degrees, as opposed to 90 degrees. Yeah, there's lots of different ways you can do a bevel angle. So which one is the correct one? Most people fall into one of three different camps when it comes to the bevel angle. Number one, there's the people who say it should be a set angle all the time, every time, for every tool. And there's some nice things to that, because if you sharpen it at 25 degrees, you can make any tool work. 25 degrees works great for most anything, and so it's kind of nice just to have a simple set angle to say, I sharpen everything at 25 degrees. Rex Kruger, a good friend of mine, he's that way. Everything in his shop is set to 25 degrees. Makes it simple, makes it easy, and works very well. Then there's the other camp that says every tool in the shop has a different bevel angle that is precisely and the best possible angle for that tool. So bench chisels, 25 degrees, mortising chisels, 30 degrees, carving tools, 25 degrees, bevel up planes, 35 degrees, bevel down planes, 25 degrees, and everything has a very specific measurement that it falls into. Because, well, there are better angles for different uses and different tools and different situations and different people. But is it really worth that much time and worrying over hitting that exact number? Because, you know, if I want a 30-degree angle, 31's not good, and 29, that's way off. And then there's the third group, which I generally fall into, which is bevel angle. Oh, yeah, it does come to a point. There is an angle on there, isn't there? Oh, nice. Now, don't get me wrong. I do care about what angle they're at, because different angles do actually have a decent amount of benefit one way or the other. There is a lot of me that wants to go the simplicity route of everything is the exact same, because then it's very standardized. However, I generally don't care what the angle is because I freehand sharpen. I'll put it on the plate and grind. I know this is a low angle, I know this is a medium angle, and I know this is a high angle. And my hands just know that if I want a high angle, I lift it up a little bit. What is that angle? I don't know it, I don't care. I've checked it in the past, but I don't need to know because I know my hands know that's a high angle, and something around that's okay. So in a moment here, I'm actually gonna go through what are all the different angles and where would you use particular ones and what makes one better than the other and all of that thing. But let me just make it very simple. If you're a beginner and you're trying to get into it and you just want to make something happen, 25 degrees is a golden angle. Anything can be sharpened at 25 degrees. From the finest carving tool to the most high angle rounded foreplane that just takes a serious amount of chunk off, they all work perfectly fine at 25 degrees. So if you're just getting started and you want the simple answer, 25 degrees on everything, it will work. It will do just fine, and you probably won't notice the difference until you actually use them for a long time. But after you've been woodworking for a little while, you may say, yeah, I want to try something different. I want to see if a different angle will actually affect my work. And so let's talk about why you might want to use one angle over the other. In general, the lower the angle, say 20, 25 degrees, the easier it is to push. A low angle, even on a chisel or a plane, is much, much easier to push. It takes less effort to push it through the wood and makes it very easy. On the other end of the spectrum, the higher the angle, 30, 35 degrees, the longer the edge is gonna last. It is a very, very durable edge in comparison to the lower angle. So if you have a lower angle, it's gonna be easier to push, but you're gonna have to sharpen it more often. If you have a higher angle, you don't have to sharpen it quite as often, but you're gonna have to put more work into it. And there are different reasons for different uses in different tools. But once you understand that contrast between easier work, lower angle, higher angle, harder work, but longer lasting edge, then you start to see where there's benefits for one or the other. When I'm carving, it's all about my force into the wood, and I want it to be very controllable. I want it to be exactly what I want it to be. And I'm very, very conscious about how much pressure I'm putting into the wood. If I put in too much pressure, I'm going to blow out past my line and chip out. I want to have all the control over the carving to make it precisely what I want it to be. Also, when I'm carving, I have a strop on the bench, and every 5-6 minutes, I'm just going to stop and strop it, and it's good to go again. As long as I keep it sharp, I really don't have to care about it being dull quicker, because I need that careful precision of a lower angle. So for that reason, most of my carving tools, I keep at about 20 degrees. I need something that's very easy to push through the wood so I can put a little bit of force into it and it does exactly what I want. And with a strop here, I can keep it incredibly sharp with very little effort. So a really, really low angle works very well. Now if I take it down to about 15 degrees, then the edge gets so brittle that it breaks off very easily. But at 20 degrees, I can get an edge that lasts 5-6 minutes without any problem, and I have a lot of control over the force. So carving tools, I usually keep it around 20. But again, I don't actually ever measure them. For me, it's around 20. Something like 16, 17, maybe upwards of 23, 24, but somewhere in that range. Just at that angle. I know that's my low angle. That is what I sharpen all of my low angle carving tools at, about 20 degrees-ish. My bench chisels though, those are a little bit different. Sometimes I'm going to be controlling them like a carving tool and I want to chisel in, but I'm usually going to be using a little bit more force. I'm going to be doing some end grain work and things like that. And occasionally I do want to actually come in and beat them. Not just doing the carving chiseling, but I want to actually drive a chisel in, come in from the other side and drive a chisel in. I need the edge to be a little bit more durable, but I still want it low enough that I can push it back and forth. So that's why generally my bench chisels are around 25 degrees-ish. Sometimes a little lower, sometimes a little bit higher. They're just sharpened at that angle. I know it's about 25 degrees. It's a little higher than my low angle. It's right there. 25 degrees gives me a little bit more durability so I can pound on it a bit without worrying about hitting the edge. It's going to last a little bit longer, so if I'm doing a bunch of tenons, I don't always take it back to the strop. Usually I let them get dull enough that they have to go back to the stones. The carving tools, on the other hand, those only touch strops unless I accidentally drop them on something or chip an edge. Those are kept crazy sharp. Bench chisels, if I need to be sharp, I sharpen them. If not, I let them go a little duller. But 25 degrees, that's okay. Mortising chisels though, that's a different story. They're intended to be bashed on. You put that in and you hit it and it drives it down in. You're rarely using hand power, you're usually driving them down in. Also, they may be used to lever out chips from time to time. So they undergo a good bit of work. Now this particular one I bought from a guy who's like, yeah, this one's actually absolute trash. I'll sell it to you for $5. The tip on it just keeps chipping out. And I looked at it and said, well, okay, I bought it from him. Took it home and measured the tip, and yeah, he has it at 20 degrees. If you have it at 20 degrees, you're going to be chipping out the edge constantly. Yeah, it's going to be very easy to drive in. You're going to get some really deep cuts, but at the moment you start to try to lever something or you hit it hard, the tip is going to chip. For a mortising tool, you need to have a really durable edge. And generally, I like to keep them around 30, 35 degrees. I want something that's going to last, something I can pound on, something I'm going to drive in a good bit. I don't have to keep them incredibly sharp because I'm going to be using a lot of force to bash them down in. So for a mortising tool, it's got to be a little more durable. 30, 35 degrees is around where I keep them at. You can see how this one originally was at 20 or so degrees, and I've put a secondary bevel on it, and that secondary bevel is actually at 35 degrees. And eventually that secondary bevel will become the main bevel after years and years of sharpening it. For chisels, whether you use them bevel up or bevel down, it really doesn't make any difference. They're always going to be cutting at the angle you're using them at. But when it comes to bench planes with a beveled down design, well, in that case, they're always cutting at 45 degrees. The bed angle is what determines their cutting angle. So in that case, if I sharpen this to 25 degrees, I'm still going to be cutting at 50 degrees. And that means if I sharpen this at 20 degrees, it's not going to be any easier to push. So I don't get the benefit of the low angle. However, it's still going to dull faster because the tip is still engaging with the work. So I get all of the downside without any of the benefit. So generally with these, I just keep them at a lower angle than the bed. The bed is at 45 degrees, and generally I'm going to sharpen these somewhere around 35 to 40 degrees. Because it doesn't make any difference in their cutting, the bed angle is what determines their cutting angle. And the higher angle you sharpen the iron at, the more durable it is, the longer it will last. The only thing to be careful about is if your bevel angle matches your bed angle, in other words, it's a 45 degree bevel on a 45 degree plane, well then your iron is not going to be able to engage unless you're all the way at the back of the wood where it can start actually cutting in. So you need the angle to be less than your bed angle. And as long as you have at least 5 degrees in there, it's going to be able to start its cut in the middle of the board and go on. Usually I keep mine at somewhere around 35 to 40. I don't like to make them go any higher than 40, so they're usually closer to the 35 side. But in that case, it's just set it on there, and I know that's the higher angle, 35 to 40. When it comes to low angle planes, then you've got a different story, because they're not determined by the bed angle. They're determined by the bevel angle, because the bevel is up. So now the bevel is actually changing the cut angle. And so if my base is at 12 degrees and my bevel is at 25 degrees, then I have a 37-degree cutting angle. That means it's 8 degrees lower than a high angle bevel down plane. And that means it's going to be easier to push. It's going to slide through the wood a little bit easier. But it does mean that it's going to dull a little bit faster, and I'm going to have to sharpen it more often. But most of the time, these are used on in-grain work. That's where they really shine. They do amazing things with in-grain work, having that lower bevel angle. And so for in-grain work, it's well worth sharpening them more often because they cut much easier across the fibers. The downside to the low angle is if you're going against the grain, as the grain runs up into it, it's going to want to peel that grain off ahead of ways, and that's where you get tear out and you get these chips in there. So the low angle isn't great for doing difficult grain or places where you have to go against the grain. So you can actually put a higher angle in here and have an iron that's at 50 degrees. And if at 50 plus the 12, so now you're at like a 62 degree. That's a really high angle and will do very well against difficult grain where it's switching and going against it. It will compress the fibers a little bit more. Also, with that higher angle, it's going to last longer, but it's also going to be a lot more work to push it. So again, you're back to that same condition of the higher the angle, the more durable the blade. The lower the angle, the easier it is to push. Choose which one you want. There are lots of other places where you may want to choose other things. A card scraper cuts at a negative angle. Even though there's a tiny little edge on the end that's curling it, you're actually compressing the fibers, and so you get a really clean cut against the grain. And there are other different possibilities. Just understand that the bevel angle matters a decent amount, but not a huge amount. You can do the same work on pretty much any tool with a 35-degree cut as opposed to a 20-degree cut. You can do about the same work whether it be a 35-degree angle or a 20-degree angle. It just depends on how durable is the edge and how easy is it going to be to push. Some tools will perform better if they have less force on them. Some tools will perform better if they have a more durable edge. And you got to kind of play that spectrum. There is no exact point that is best for each tool at any particular point. There is a spectrum that is all gray, and you pick the one along the line that fits you the best. Or you could do like Rex Kruger and a lot of others do and just say everything's 25 because everything works at 25, so why not just make it a little simpler? Rex is even making these little doohickeys with this edge cut out here, so you can put the edge into there and you know, oh, it's 25 degrees, so mine is actually bigger than 25 degrees. And it's got wrenches for other things such as the split nuts. It's kind of a cool little tool. So in the end, an edge is what you make it. Quite literally, because you can do whatever you want with it. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I like freehand sharpening. It releases you from the obligation of maintaining an exact angle. The angle is that, and it doesn't matter that much. Some tools you want a lower angle. Some tools you want a higher angle. Just set your wrist at whatever feels good and have fun with it. That's what the whole thing is about, right? If you're not having fun in your shop, then what are you doing down there? I hope this answered a few questions and possibly started a few arguments, but yeah, it's one of those things of have a little bit of fun with it, experiment, try different things and see what you like, because there is no right or wrong answer. It's a spectrum. It's not exact points, and if you don't hit that point, you're wrong. No, it's just relax, enjoy the process, and find what works for you, because everyone's different, and that's what makes this sport fun, because there is no right way to do it. As long as you're doing it safe, then you're doing it correctly. So have some fun, try some new things, and have fun in the shop. If this did bring any other questions to you that I didn't answer, throw those down in the comments down below. I do read through all of them and I answer as many of the questions as I can get to. I do like helping with the audience that way. So if you have questions, throw them down there, and that does actually help out the channel. So you are helping us out. Anytime you like, comment, share, subscribe, or even put comment down below, that does help out the channel. So thank you. On top of that, there are a bunch of people scrolling over here on the side. They are the patrons on Patreon, and they are the ones who are quite literally keeping us going. We are sponsored by you, the viewer. We are not sponsored by the companies trying to sell things. We are sponsored by the people who want to watch this. So I get to make what you guys want me to make, not what the company selling doohickey number 3 wants me to make. And I hope you like that. It's something that I like to keep up. And as long as patrons and members keep the support coming, then we'll keep the channel going. So thank you for that. If you'd like to find out more, links down below. Click the little join button, become a member. Special perks for both. You know how it works. I think that'll do it for now. And until next time, have a wonderful day. Choosing the correct angle for the correct tool is incredibly important. For this one, you need Michael. For this one, you need Gabriel.